Hello, hello, and welcome to the Here to Uplift podcast, where we center the stories of impactful changemakers, entrepreneurs, and community leaders who have done the hard work of uplifting themselves through adversity to get where they are today, and now uplift others along the way in their journeys. I'm Lolo Fisher, your host, lover of all things wellness, healing, and empowerment, and I would greatly appreciate if you show us your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing this podcast with others. Let's get into it. Today, my special guest is Cristina Cortes. I met Cristina at a high-value networking event in the Bay Area, and a couple months later, I attended her content and cocktails event for Bay Area creators, entrepreneurs, and business owners. And y'all, I was hooked. Seriously. Her light truly radiates out when she speaks, and this event was the perfect way for me to see who she is, not only on social media, but in person too. But let me stop fangirling for a second and tell you more about her and why she is our featured guest for the podcast for this episode. Cristina took the leap from a stable full-time job in the tech industry doing marketing to become an owner of her own online business. Now, she coaches millennial women nano-influencers and small business owners on how to monetize their social media to build their personal brand and business, particularly with a focus on her TikTok community. Her goal is to ensure that powerful influence and money end up in the hands of good people who will make the world a better place, with, of course, an intentional focus on women of color, which you will clearly hear demonstrated throughout this interview. In today's talk, Cristina walks us through her journey before the leap, from having to explore and redefine her identity, to overcoming an abusive relationship and pushing through fear and anxiety to say yes to using her talents and skills to build up her own business. Without further ado, listen in and grab your notebook for my chat with Cristina Cortes. Awesome. Welcome, y'all, to the Here to Uplift podcast. I am here with my special guest, Cristina Cortes, and I am super excited for this conversation we're about to have. One, because I'm already one of your biggest fans. I've been following your social media journey for a while, but I know the last time we talked at an event, you told me there's a lot more that people don't know and a lot of stories to the journey. So that's what we're going to get into today. Dang. So I want to start off with you. Yeah. Introduce yourself. Tell the people who you are.
Yeah. Dang, I hyped myself up. Now I have to live to these expectations.
You already there.
I need to talk lower of myself, so the expectations are always very high. Well, I'm Cristina, for those that don't know me, and it was so great to meet you in person at the Content and Cocktails event, which was really only
a month ago.
It was 2 weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But I'm Cristina, for those that don't know me, and I'm a social media coach. So I help women business owners with TikTok, Instagram, growing their brand, growing their business, and using social media to work smarter, not harder, because so many people are struggling online, or they feel like it's toxic for their mental health, it causes them anxiety, and especially for women, especially for women of color, I think that the pressure to show up in a certain way is so high, and I think that we have such powerful missions and a voice to share that I don't think is shared enough, which is amazing that you're having this podcast to uplift the voices of women. So that is why I do what I do, to help make sure that women are getting their voice out there in a way that works for them too, because I don't spend my whole day on social media. And I think a lot of people do with editing and different things like that. So that's why I help them learn how to do it. I have a group program for TikTok, and so that's what I do.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I still haven't gotten TikTok yet. I know I said I would last time I saw you. I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna get there. But I think it's interesting that you just pointed out already that you don't spend all day on TikTok or all day on social media in general. As a social media coach, I would imagine she is on social media constantly. How do you deal with that? But if you're not, what's the system behind it that makes sure you're not on it daily? Or daily, but I'm on it 24/7.
It's a lot. I'm on it a lot, for sure. But I think a lot of things go into running a business, and I started running a business 3 years ago, and at that time, a lot of what I was doing was just social media, posting, and that's not really a business. And I think a lot of people are just posting, and then they're like, well, where are my orders? Where are my sales? Where's your infrastructure? What about your finance?
There's no conversion.
Exactly. There's so much that goes into running a business, and it's not just social media. And I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been the person that's on there all day, every day. And so I just try to help women
I like it.
get away from that.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna like, tell me about young Cristina. Like, I want to know Cristina as a kid before we were able and old enough to drink like this.
Oh my God. Well, fun fact, I didn't drink till I was like 18. You know, a lot of people drink when they're in high school.
Yeah.
I never had anything to drink. I know, and then I just went all downhill after that. I was like, everything went down.
You're like, then I had to try everything, so it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Well, I was born in Guatemala.
Okay.
And I was adopted, so my parents went to go get me when I was 9 months old, and they were already processing the paperwork for me to be adopted before I was even born. I don't know the whole story, but yeah, they were already figuring it out, and I was born. Adoption then, 27 years ago, and now is still really difficult.
Such a process.
Yeah, the paperwork that you have to do, and to show that you're a capable parent, which I don't think a lot of parents have to show that they're capable unless you're adopting.
Not at all.
which makes sense that you should have to. But it was a really difficult process. You have to get letters of recommendation. You have to show that your house is equipped for a child. Like, it's a lot.
Right.
It's a huge financial burden to adopt a child. It's a privilege to be able to adopt. And so anyways, they were processing the paperwork, and it was taking so long. They weren't able to come get me when I was born. They had to literally write a letter. Now I think you can call or email politicians, but they had to write a letter to get the paperwork expedited from the U.S.
Wow.
And it was just, yeah. So anyways, 9 months later, they were able to go get me.
Yeah.
They came, brought me to Newark.
Okay.
Newark, California.
The East
to be
Coast.
specific.
Like
Newark,
near California.
Near
I was like
Fremont.
already New Jersey. Okay, just kidding.
I think that
Keep going.
Newark is more popular than Fremont.
I hadn't heard of the one near
No
Fremont.
offense
So.
to Fremont, but that was where I came.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm an only child, and that was kind of how my life started as a kid. And I definitely, as a child, I felt, my parents told me, people always ask, when did you find out that you were adopted? And my parents told me when I was young enough to understand, like old enough to understand, but like as early as they possibly could.
Yeah.
There's actually kids' books about it that kind of explain it in a really easy way for kids. And so there's a book, and they would read it to me, and I could make sense of it, but I always knew that I was different in a sense where you go to the doctor and then they're like, what's your health history? And
You're like,
we
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
We don't know. Or, you know, kids would say, you look like your mom, or you look like your dad. And my mom is white, and so she's blonde, blue eyes, doesn't look like me at all. And then my dad is Mexican.
Okay.
And people will say, you look like your dad, or you kind of look like your mom. And I'm like, I don't really look like either of them. I'm like, okay. But I knew very early on that I wasn't, you know. And that kind of brought a lot of subconscious feelings of not being loved, and abandonment of, well, if my birth mom really loved me, then why didn't she keep me? And so I had that from a very young age, and that kind of made me in this achievement cycle from a very young age of, I have to do this and do this and do this, and then I can have love. So that was kind of like
feeling like you have to earn it.
Yeah, and I grew up in such an amazing family and house, and no problems or anything. It wasn't anything that my parents could have done. I think I would have felt that way no matter what. And a lot of kids that are adopted feel that way too. And you have this identity crisis of who am I and where do I come from? And I knew I was born in Guatemala, and then it wasn't until I was 26 that I took 23andMe and found out I'm actually half Mexican. And I'm like, cool.
You're like, maybe we are related.
I'm like, everything that I thought I knew is wrong. Well, you think you're one thing growing up, and I'm happy. I'm happy to know that, and I'm happy to get closer to knowing who I really am. But
yeah. What was the neighborhood you grew up in like? Was that a cross-cultural experience too, or was it just in the home that you experienced that?
I grew up, so we came to Fremont, and I lived there for about a year, and then we moved to San Jose, which was still very diverse, and there was a lot of diverse people and kids that were at the schools that I went to, but it was my middle school especially and elementary school were more, I would say probably more predominantly white. And the neighborhood where we lived too. So that was always, it was weird because my parents didn't want to teach me Spanish because their rationale was, well, my mom speaks English, and so naturally we're going to speak English in the house because she doesn't know Spanish. So how would we? And so there was always that feeling that I felt at a young age too of wanting to be more, not be more white, but just that feeling of assimilation or the feeling of,
well, it's like the pressure to fit in, right? Like if you see everybody around you, you see it in your household. Like I know I experienced that too as like somebody who's mixed. My dad was white. It's like, okay, naturally, even though my mom is black, we had a lot more cultural practices in my house that strayed away from her culture. So I was like, wait, why aren't we like learning about this side as much? But I think it's also generational. Like our parents' generation was a lot more on the assimilation side than I think our generation where we're like, be unique, show your culture, show out. So it makes sense.
So I think my dad, when he came to the U.S., he was 8 years old, didn't know English. He was the middle child of 7. And so he saw both sides of struggling and like struggling with knowing English, and so he didn't want me to have the challenges that he had, and so I felt like I didn't really grow up around that side as much, and so as I got older I started to appreciate it and want to know more and want to, you know, embody who I am and where I come from, and so I just felt like I have to totally reinvent myself and figure out who I am and everything that I feel like I had to literally, not parent myself, but I had to almost like parent my inner child in a way. So
that's part of it.
That was
you got therapy then, right?
Yeah. Well, I need to go back, but I did.
Like, as soon as someone says inner child, I'm like, therapy. Working on that now. We're going to get there. No, I really appreciate that because I didn't know you were adopted, but I think those cross-cultural experiences really impact the way we connect with other people, which now makes sense because although I went to the Content and Cocktails event, the first time I met you was at the HVN networking event, and I just, even in that space, seeing so many folks of color, entrepreneurs like doing their thing is beautiful to me. But naturally you get attracted to folks who have that mindset of inclusion. So it's not just standing out, but also like how do you include other people in the conversation? And I've definitely seen that with you, like with the Content and Cocktails event.
Thank you.
I think, tell me if I'm saying this right, but you had told me like I have a target audience, but everyone is welcome, right? And that target audience would be women. Okay, tell me why.
Yeah.
Why is it women?
I think it's important for, well, so it all kind of goes back to childhood too, and I think, you know, to the point of your podcast too, in wanting to go backwards and see what is behind the success or the person that is here today.
Right.
I think that for so long I felt like my upbringing brought me down in a lot. Not in the sense of, because we didn't struggle in the sense of like a traditional sense in that way of financially or anything. I grew up in a very loving household, but because of the identity crisis that I had growing up, and I didn't realize it until I was 20, 21, 22, 23. Yeah, I didn't know why I had this thing inside, but growing up in that way kind of gives me perspective now to include other people, and knowing that for so long I felt like I wasn't Latina enough, or I'm also not white, I'm brown obviously, and so I would feel the feelings of how people would, professors or different people would kind of discriminate, or like microaggressions that they would have. And so I never felt like I belonged anywhere, really. And so now I try to create a space where people feel like they belong and they're included. And naturally, I'm an introvert, even though I talk a lot and I'm all around everywhere. People don't believe me, but I'm like, no, I'm really an introvert. And so a lot of what I want to do is really create this space where people can feel like, no matter, their background or where they come from, that they can feel included and that their ideas are honored and listened to. But that's kind of where that comes from. Okay. But the other thing, why women are really, and women of color are the people that I want to support the most, is because not growing up, not feeling Latina, growing up and not knowing Spanish, I didn't feel like I could identify as that, even though I did subconsciously deep down. Right. I wouldn't just kind of like say that to people, and I just felt like I was not Latina enough to even say anything about that. And I don't feel that way now, which is good, but that's when I kind of started joining so many women's groups and being a part of a lot of women's groups. And so that's kind of been what I've done for a long time. I co-founded Women in Business at San Jose State and a lot of other things. And so I think, though, ultimately, and in college, I went through a domestic abuse relationship, and there are so many things that people don't know about what women go through, and women of color especially, that I think that, and even we just not celebrated, we just observed, definitely not celebrated, observed Latina Equal Pay Day, and the day actually changes based on how many days through the year a woman has to work to make the same amount as the salary from the previous year of a white man. And so it used to be in 2021, it was in September or October. This year it was in December.
Can we do better?
Yeah.
Can we do better,
and then people
please?
are like, well, why do you talk about women? Like, what about the guys? It's men always ask me that. They're like, do you do anything for men? And we do. I welcome men to, any event. They can, even though my community and everything is marketed towards women, if they wanted to join and they're going to be respectful, they're more than welcome to join.
And they're going to be respectful? Let's just put that caveat in there.
Let's put that out there, because I've definitely been in spaces where people try to monopolize and take over and make it about them. And so you have to be kind of, I still get to pick.
Have you had that situation?
Not in any of my, not any that I've hosted, but in groups that I've attended or events that I've attended. Yeah, it's gonna get crazy out there.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh God. But it's just, you have to be kind of cognizant of that. But that's why I think people still fail to understand what the experience of being a woman is like.
Right. Yeah. What do you think would be like the best route for somebody who's maybe had a similar experience to us, of there's some sort of cross-cultural divide, like between who I am and the people around me, or just like there's something in my gut that's like not feeling right in terms of my identity? What's the best route to explore that and figure it out to gain that confidence?
It's hard, and I would say definitely know that you're not alone, and that I think a lot of people present themselves as put together and they have their shit figured out, but I don't think people really do, and not everybody leads on that they don't have it together. Right. And so I would just say, know that you're not alone, and know that the feeling that you feel is you are who you are, and you get, despite your past, or how you were raised, or what somebody told you that you're not, you decide who you are, and you get to create who you are, and your past definitely doesn't define your future. And you can, like for me, I'm learning Spanish now, and it's very hard to learn a language
when you're older.
When you're older, and people try to kind of put you down, and they've been afraid to really express themselves. So they try to make you scared or seem silly. Like they try to gaslight you and basically be like, oh, you want to know more about yourself, and you think you can evolve and change and become better.
Actually,
Like,
yes.
who do you think you are? And they try to put you down and they try to discourage you. And people, you know, they'll make fun of my Spanish, or they'll say things or be like, oh, you know, you're white or whatever. I'm like, okay.
It's like, but you don't know where I came from. You don't know my story.
Yeah. And you don't, who is and who's not. I mean, we're all people in different communities. We're all very different, despite maybe coming from the same country or speaking the same language or coming from the same culture. We're still very different, even though we can all come from the same place. And so I think explore as much as you can, and it's hard to turn off or ignore the thoughts of what other people try to put on you, of making you feel like you shouldn't figure out who you are. Yeah. But it's hard. It's really hard. It's really hard. But find the people that support it and stay close to them. Because the people, you probably can't escape the people that are being negative about what you're trying to do. But as much as you can, stay close to the people that support you as much as possible.
Definitely. I feel like I've had so many conversations related to that lately, just of actually do an assessment of the people you're surrounding yourself with, of the environments you're putting yourself in, because it does make a difference. And it's so hard sometimes. Like for me, the biggest challenges are family and friends that you've had for years. It's like, I got so much love for you, but I have to pick and choose how much time I spend with you right now, because it does have an impact on me that unfortunately isn't my favorite. So that's a hard conversation to have, or sometimes it's not a conversation at all. It's just a boundary you've set and you got to go for it. But I'm hearing you on that one. Finding the people to support you in the hard stages of the journey that will lift you up and not just tear you down.
It's hard, and you have to kind of know that your worth is inherently there no matter what, and that you don't need. It's so much easier said than done. I mean, it sounds so easy, like you just tell yourself and then you're okay, and that's just not.
That's not true.
That's just not the case. It's taken me years and years and years and years, and I'm still a hot mess, honestly. Like, if anyone thinks this is together, no.
I love it. Well, that's why I love sharing these stories, because you do not come off as a hot mess to me. I don't think you're a hot mess, but we all know how we feel at home or in our private moments, that it's like, oh, girl, get it together. And then you come out and you're like, oh no, I got my smile on. We're good. We're putting it together. But
we can choose to have a good day. We can choose to change our thoughts every day and focus on that, and focus on what you can create for yourself. And despite all, it can honestly make me feel pretty depressed when I think about the state of the world and how polarized we are, and how people how we can't even have simple conversations, and it can be really draining. And I think just as much as you can, don't neglect that. That's still there, and we'll do as much as we can to fix that as much as we can. But I think focus on what you can create, and despite the inequality and the discrimination and the microaggressions and all the shit that we deal with, I think just every day, just know that whatever people said about us, about women of color, about people of color, that none of that is true. And it's affected us, and it's held us back, and it's not right, and we need to make it right in every way that we can. But you can try to put me down, but I mean, I'm gonna work on I'm not saying, oh, I'm so awesome, but I know now that that's not true. And so.
Well, I feel like the content that you put out there and related to your business comes off as extremely authentic. Like, what you're saying now, while there's pieces of your story I didn't know, it is still congruent with everything that you represent on social media, like on your website and so on. So I'm curious, like, what stages did you get or go through, really, before you even got to owning your own business? And did you feel that confident and congruent in other work that you were doing before opening your business?
Not really. I studied business management, and so my whole life I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was like,
it was in you.
I was like, how are we making money today? I was like trying to finesse my parents. Like, they would, they had to like bribe me basically to clean because I don't like cleaning, but I would always try to finesse and be like, I'll do something extra to give me like $20 and I'll do this, which, you know, most people didn't get paid for that, but I was like,
you found a way.
I was like trying to negotiate. But, you know, just always trying to, you know, if it was fundraising for cheer when I was growing up, whatever it was, I'm like, okay, we're going to get this money. We're going to get this money. I don't know how we're going to get it. But, yeah. And I was like, I'm going to run a business. But then I started to shift it where I realized I wanted to work in corporate. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to be a corporate baddie and I'm going to go like do. And then I graduated and I got a tech job. And it was not the biz. It was not the biz. First of all, I was commuting 3 hours a day.
3 hours?
3 hours, which is not right. I don't think anyone should be doing that.
I don't want that.
Sitting in a car, I just don't think that's healthy for your mental health, for your physical health, for your confidence, for your self-esteem. It's just bad. Bad.
Bad for your back.
Bad for every avenue. Yeah, it's bad in every way. And so that was miserable. And then by the time I got there, I was just in a bad mood. Like I just didn't want to be there. And if I was passionate and I really enjoyed what I was doing, I would have felt differently. But I was doing marketing at the time and mainly copywriting.
Okay.
And helping the chief HR officer with her brand. I would ghostwrite for her. And I realized and it was a lot of LinkedIn writing, and I realized if I was doing that for myself, I could probably gain new opportunities. I could elevate myself, do like different projects. And then this was kind of the time when bloggers or influencers were coming up, and you would see people traveling, and living their best life, and they were getting paid, and it was their job. And I'm like, how are you doing this?
How am I doing this great work for somebody else and not for myself?
Exactly. I'm like, this is not right. I need to figure out how I can do that. Or even if it's on the side. If I start posting more, then maybe I'll attract new opportunities. And
is that how it started, on the side? Okay.
So I started my beauty business on the side. I was doing network marketing, and I really loved it and enjoyed it. But ultimately, I've always wanted something to be completely mine, and that wasn't completely mine, although that was where I really learned how to do social media. And so that's kind of where the confidence started to come back, and I started to enjoy life more too, because I just didn't even enjoy life really at that point. But another thing too, and there's so many little things that people can do to kind of pull themselves out of being down or of a bad situation. Really getting outside, I think, is so helpful. And I started listening to podcasts. And I would listen to a podcast on my way to work, and that became my favorite part of the day. It was like, I used to hate getting in the car because it hurt my back and the traffic.
There's all the things you can complain about, but you transformed it to something that you can enjoy.
Exactly. And so I would buy audiobooks and I would listen to podcasts, and that really kind of got me back to who I really was and back to the confidence of remembering that I can change my situation, and I don't have to just, even if it's changing my attitude about the situation. I might still hate the work, and I might still hate the commute and hate whatever, but I can be in a better mood about it. And it showed me that I can change my attitude. I can literally change my thoughts, and I can change my attitude. And if that's all I do, then that's really valuable. And so I would just try to be in a good mood at work, and and it worked, and it started to make my day better. And I would listen to podcasts about people starting a side hustle or about them starting a business, and it's just one thing after another. I think I tell people all the time that really the success, I think it's people that just don't stop trying. If you really, I've been in places like with business where you just don't make any money, or people think you're cuckoo crazy, and I think honestly that's another part of it too, that I don't think people talk about this enough, and it's that entrepreneurs, people that really elevate to high levels in whatever area it is. You could be a nurse, you could be a soccer player, whatever it is. I think honestly they're a little bit insane.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of like it's what's that quote? The people that are crazy enough to think that they can change the world. I believe that, and I think you just have to be a little crazy. You have to be a little out there, you know.
A little bit more on the risk-taking side, for sure. But you have to see it in a different perspective, because I think for me, I definitely started as like a calculated risk taker. Everything has a plan. That's a risk. People aren't going to get it, but I have all these plans behind it. And now that I'm actually owning my own business and running things, I'm like, I ain't got no plans. We're going to make it work. Here we go. Like, I got the right idea. I got a good feeling about it. Like, and people are like, what?
Like please work.
It's going to come. It's going to come. But it only came when I was able to surround myself with other people who are just as crazy, you know, and are like doing that work, and that it's worked for them. Like seeing the examples of a lot of folks that came to the Content and Cocktails event and HVN networking events. People are taking the risks and making it work for them and failing along the way. And that permission to fail is so important, I think, to see. And that's the parts we don't see of entrepreneurship and business near as much as we see the success.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
Okay, how long were you in that tech world?
A year and a half.
Okay,
I
and then you knew like you had to do something different from there.
Yeah, and honestly, I probably knew after 6 months. I knew pretty instantly.
And that's when you started doing it on the side, right? Before you opened your full thing.
Yeah, I tried to have a better attitude and get it together. And then I got really excited about it, and then, you know.
Well, I think too, if you hate your situation, if you aren't able to come in with a positive attitude, you're going to be showing that attitude, the negative attitude, to all the people you work around, when in reality, those can all be connections for when you do your own thing.
Oh, yeah.
Do you feel like you still talk to any of the folks from the tech world or the network marketing at all?
From network marketing, yeah, everybody. They're amazing, and that was being around a lot of women that are entrepreneurial and supportive and ambitious. From tech, no, not really. And I also don't think I carried myself in the best way, and that's kind of something that I look back on, and I think, you know, it's a learning lesson. I don't think I needed to be so bitter. But I mean, that bitterness also drove me to make a change, and sometimes you have to kind of get there. And during the time when I had my network marketing business, it got hard again financially, and not again, but that's when it really kind of got to its lowest point. And then I started a part-time job. And so that again was another time where I was very bitter, very upset that I was in that situation, and again had to use the skills that I had once practiced before of fixing my attitude and showing up in a better way. And
is that bitterness a source of motivation still? Like that you're trying to avoid being bitter again?
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm hearing, the pattern. Like, I was in this situation, I made it work, but I was bitter. So next thing, bitter about that. Next thing, so you just like kept leveling up from the bitterness.
I'm like, oh God, I don't want that pattern to continue. I'm like, oh, I have to stop that pattern.
Like,
well,
wait a second.
You pointed that out. Yeah, I mean, when I left my part-time job, I actually left my part-time job in August of this year.
Oh, okay, that's recent.
I went for a long time, and when I left, I actually took the paycheck, which was nothing, my very last paycheck, and I have it hanging on my wall next to my desk, and it motivates me and reminds me what I don't want to go back to and why
the source.
Yeah. And it's like people have a vision board, and I have things that I aspire to on my wall too, and that's worked for me too in a lot of different ways. But that, I don't want to go back to that.
Sometimes that can be so much stronger than, like, you have to have a vision for yourself, but knowing what you don't want, that's with everything, business, relationship, life in general. Like, I know that's what I don't want. I'm going to keep that memory in the back of my mind so that we never go back there. We don't have to go back. Okay, then building your business. How did that go? Where did it start? How did it get to where it is now?
Well, so I started my business 6 months ago. No, not 6 months ago. I started in May or April of this year. And I was doing my network marketing business. I was doing it all on Instagram. And a lot of people actually here from the Capital Club that were following me, and people outside of the club, would say, oh, I love how you market yourself. I feel like I know you. I love how you present your business. I follow other people that are doing what you're doing, and I feel like the way you do it is very genuine. And I just like watching your stories. Like, I don't know. And they wouldn't purchase anything from me or they weren't interested in that necessarily, but they liked following along. And so I started probably 2 years ago leading social media workshops. And it was just fun. I just genuinely enjoyed it, and helping people brand themselves, helping them market, showing them how to edit videos. And actually when Instagram started, when I was in high school, maybe in middle school, when Instagram started, I would track my analytics, which they definitely didn't have business accounts back then.
Young.
They didn't have creator
I didn't know what I was doing back then. Hold on.
I love numbers, and I love tracking things. And so I started doing social media workshops about 2 years ago. And it was fun. It was just fun. I loved helping people with their branding and their marketing, showing up. I think it takes a lot of guts to put yourself out on social media. And I think people think it's easy. They think, oh, influencers or content creators or whatever they want to call people that are posting online, they think that it's just an easy job or it's an easy task, and why don't they get a real job? But if it was easy, everyone would do it, and it takes a lot of bravery. You know, we can talk about the skills and all those things, but it takes a lot of bravery, and the people that are really successful actually have built influence. And yeah, you can go viral, yeah, you can have nice looking content, but it takes influence to really grow and scale and to monetize and to make it a business, because I'm not here to teach or to just post myself and just teach people that it's just for clout. I want to help women make money online, and I want to help them make money doing what they love doing. So I started teaching people social media, and then I started getting other people that were interested too, that were following me. And so I helped a group of men that were insurance agents. I helped a bunch of just like random people learn how to brand themselves at San Jose State. I would go back and teach workshops too. And I'm like, you know what? This is a job, not a job, but this is something that people do for a business. This could be a thing. And so I am still on the Dynamic Women's Council here at the Capital Club. And one of the women that had joined is a business coach, Chandra Brooks, and she's kind of like a local celebrity. Everybody knows her, but she was here, and I knew she was a business coach, but one day I kind of serendipitously ran into her. She was having essentially a sales brunch, but a brunch for women entrepreneurs that want to start their business. And I honestly, at the time, I was like, I don't like to call myself broke. I don't believe in that, but I was basically broke.
You were temporarily.
I was temporarily not doing so hot. And, you know, just, I feel like when you have a good attitude and when you have a good energy, then you can attract things, and they come in different.
And you were in this environment, which is around essentially wealth and wealth as a standard rather than just a goal. And not staying stuck in a victim mindset either. And I think I was stuck there for a little bit, and just woe is me, and oh, this sucks, and oh my God, what am I gonna do? Like, and not trying. Not trying to make it better, and I didn't know how, and I knew I didn't want to go back to a corporate job. I knew I didn't like my part-time job, but I needed the flexibility. I didn't know what to do, but I went to the brunch, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so amazing. She could help me build this business, teaching people how to do social media, and I hired her. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. I'm like, God help me, because I don't know how we're going to do this. But
like I need to just do whatever she says, and I mean, not everything, but like essentially follow what she says and be coachable and do the hard things. It's going to be scary, but I know that I enjoy doing this, and I know I can make money doing it, and this could be a business. And so right away, within a month, I had it started, got my first client probably within 6 weeks, here too, and then it just kind of snowballed. And I was already, the thing is, I was already building my brand, and people thought I was doing well, and I'm like, no.
You're like, I'm still going. I'm still going. But that's what you were attracting.
Yeah.
You were attracting like folks who were already seeing like, she's doing well, I want that, because of how you represented yourself. That's huge.
Yeah, and I'm just lucky that she was so supportive. Then she hired me, and then just, you know, it just kind of it blew up after that. And it's still, like, honestly, this past 9 or 8 or however many months it's been since I started, it's been hard.
Yeah.
Starting a business is hard, and getting it going was very difficult. And I always go back, as much as I have the entrepreneur creative mindset, it's going from being an employee to running your day is hard.
Oh, you can say that again.
Like, I kind of need to be told, like,
not having that accountability, that direction.
To, like, keep me on track.
There are so many good nuggets of what you said. I want to like write a paper on it. Like, you started off talking about getting out of the victim mindset. That's huge in itself. That could be a whole year-long process for somebody that's like really trying to figure that out.
Years.
Yeah, I was like, that victim mindset is huge, and getting out of that. You talked about immediately putting yourself out there, even in spaces that you're like, I don't know if I like really fit in this space. I don't know if that's for me, but I'm gonna get in this space. Finding a mentor, and like Chandra, right? Sandra being that mentor for you, and then being coachable. Yeah. Like, you can have as many mentors, sponsors, great people around you as you want, but if you're not actually open to receiving that advice, that coaching, like, you're not going to get anywhere with that. So that's like another huge lesson. There's like so many. The environment you put yourself in general, so not just the people, but the actual spaces, and then how you represent yourself, and actually thinking about, we're all going to have those down days, but when I put myself out there, this is how I want to come across to people. And then not stopping, which is what you said earlier. That's that tiny bit of insanity that I think every business owner and entrepreneur has, is to be successful, you just have to not stop and see past the temporary brokenness, temporary setbacks, whatever it might be, to keep going, keep going, keep going. Like, so many lessons, like, right within that one example. Yeah,
and for people that are like, whoa, that's a lot. I don't even know how. I'm just down. I'm depressed. My anxiety stops. Like, I understand. And I think it's just do one thing.
One thing. And what would be that one thing?
It compounds and it dominoes. And you just do one thing, and then you get in a better environment, or you get in a better state, and then it becomes another thing. But I think if it was one thing, honestly, I think it's cliche. It really sounds cliche to say keep trying and not to give up. But honestly, I think that grit part of not giving up is really important. And you kind of have to have a knowing that if you know that your success is inevitable and you feel that way, and you're just like, well, there's nothing in sight that shows me that this is possible. I have no evidence. My past is a mess. How could I, if I'm repeating my past, then I have no future. Well, I would say your past doesn't define your future, and just keep trying. Yeah. I know it's really cliche, but not to give up. And what I would say is that my anxiety, sometimes and I like to say it slows me down, but it doesn't stop me. And it has slowed me down maybe for a day, maybe for hours, maybe it was for weeks, maybe it was for months. Some people, it slows them down for years. And I think it did slow me down for years. I was still doing things, and I wasn't, at a standstill, but I definitely think it slowed me down for years. But it slows me down, but it doesn't stop you. And it can slow you down, but it doesn't have to stop you. And you can decide how long it slows you down for, and that's okay. It's okay. Yeah. It's okay that it slows you down, but don't let it stop you completely. And sometimes it can feel like it stopped you, But then you wake up the next day, or you wake up in a month later and you're
Right.
like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm over it, or I can take the next step. I can take
Yes.
that one step, and that's good.
Yeah. And I think a piece of that too is sometimes we just, I'll speak for myself. I have been in places where anxious, depressed, whatever it may be, and then something else that's out of my control gets thrown in. I'm like, all right, it's over. Next day, I wake up and I'm like, you know what? Fresh day. Let me say my prayers. Let me meditate. We're going to start over. Another thing happens. It's like, should I even try? Like, what's happening? But then, like you said, I decide on a step, or I get some motivation, whether it's listening to a podcast or somebody speaks something, and I'm like, ooh, that's a sign. But I've had the issue of I pick a step that's actually step 5 instead of step 1. And in my efforts to try to go for step 5, I keep failing because I didn't start with the foundations. And I think that's the piece that was a hard lesson for me. Is like, you can have the big dreams and goals, but maybe the first step was just being in an environment with other people who are doing the work. Maybe the first step was asking a question about where you're supposed to start to somebody, rather than just thinking you got it all figured out and going for step 5. That was my challenge. So I think I like the advice. I know I like the advice around just taking one step. And I would just caution anybody who's listening and maybe having those big dreams to actually figure out what the foundations are, or ask someone who's been there, because you may not have the example in your own life of like, oh, my parents did this, or I know I've done this before, so I'm going to do it again. But there are so many examples in the world around people who have pulled themselves out of adversity. That's literally the point of this podcast, is to share the stories behind the success. We've all struggled with something, whether it's identity crisis, cross-cultural divides. I've talked to a lot of people who have dealt with homelessness and that absolute brokenness or breaking point, negative relationships, abusive relationships. Like, there's so many commonalities we've had in our struggles, and I want to see us find more commonalities in our success too. But we have to work through those steps one at a time.
Yeah. I think every strength is a weakness, and every weakness is a strength. And so the things that I used to feel were so embarrassing. Like being adopted, when I was, probably till I was 20, I never talked about it to anybody. I maybe told 3 people, literally. And then I kind of matured and became comfortable with it, and then journaled a lot. I journal a lot. I'm not great at expressing myself to other people and sharing how I feel. And so I've always written and just journaled my whole life. And so I started to journal, and then I started to become, come to terms with it and learn where it affected me in my life. But that for so long was a weakness, I guess you could say, or I saw it as a bad thing. I saw it as I know for sure the feeling of not being loved and that fear of not being loved stopped me and wreaked havoc in my life in a lot of ways. But now I'm like, that's why I have perspective. That's why I include people. That's why I am vulnerable with other people, because I don't share how I feel, but I want to make it a space where other people don't feel the way I've felt. So whatever is stopping you, or whatever you feel brings you down, it's on the other side of it. It's actually a great strength.
It's just like flipping the perspective. Same thing, same situation, just flip the perspective. I like that. Thank you for that. I'm like, ooh, now I'm like, you got me thinking. I'm like, ooh, hold on. What am I defining as a weakness right now that actually I should be looking at as a strength? Because I do that to myself, and I feel like this is a pattern for anybody, but especially women, that we put ourselves down more than anything else. Like, it's easy for us to say, like, yes, I'm not going to judge other people. But as soon as we look in the mirror, as soon as we're in our heads and in our own thoughts, like, we judge ourselves so much more harshly. Why?
I know.
Why do we do that?
I know.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's jump a little bit to you're coaching somebody around their social media. What are those like tips that you find yourself repeating over and over to your clients?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, so there's kind of two sides to it. There's the mindset side of it, which subconsciously stops most women, but everyone wants the strategies and the tips, and that's important. I think as far as on the strategy side, it's constantly changing. Yeah. Instagram is not what it used to be when it started 10 or whatever years ago. And so I think have a mindset and know that it's constantly changing. And whether it's TikTok today or YouTube or podcast, whatever, the platforms are going to change. In 5 years, they're not going to be what they are now. In 10 years, they're not going to be what they are now. So understand that your role as an influencer, a content creator, a business owner, you are in the business of understanding how content works. And if you don't level up and rise to the occasion, you're just not staying current. And that's a big problem that I see is just that
trying to use old strategies for new situations.
They're doing things that worked a year or two ago and they just don't work anymore. And that's fine. It's just stay up to date, follow creators that are talking about this kind of stuff and that are basically coaching on their page and are telling you kind of, what works and what doesn't work. So I would say do that. Another thing, just quick things, is just capture people's attention. The important thing is 3 things. Capture the attention, sustain it for as long as you can, and convert it as quickly as you can and as often as you can. Okay. So in any way that you can capture attention, whether that's with hooks, with transitions, with effects, do that and learn them. People don't want to learn effects or transitions. And I'm like, if you learned it, it's honestly not that hard, first of all. But if you learned it, you would set yourself above all the people that don't want to, you would actually put yourself in another level. So it's not that hard. Try one thing, try to learn one thing. If it's totally too hard, try something else that's maybe not, try another effect or try another transition. Yeah.
Find a social media coach.
Find a coach, find a VA, whatever you need to do to figure it out. And then I would say sustaining the attention. This is a big thing too, is that people, they want the strategies, but I think if you do this thing and you can learn how to do this well, the strategies really don't matter and the community will build for you. And that's learn how to be someone that's interesting and influential. And so, I could make the crappiest video, but if I am influential, then, people will stick around. So how can you be influential? How can you be interesting? Think of the people that you look to that are interesting, that have influence, other people look up to them, and then kind of start to pick out what are the attributes and the qualities that they have. Now, I will say one thing. If you're looking at someone else and they have traits that you like, chances are you probably have them in yourself. And you think you don't have them, but you do. That's why you notice them. That. And so don't put yourself down if you're seeing that in someone else. Mel Robbins talks about it, how jealousy can actually be a good thing, and it shows you all the whether it's someone's relationship and you're like, oh, they're just in such a loving relationship. I wish I had that for myself. Well,
go get it.
You would admire a loving relationship. That's great. Now you can kind of see how you can have that in your own life. So how can you be influential? I would study that. Study all the materials that you can on being influential and being interesting. When we think of people that are interesting, they have different experiences. They have a different perspective. It's the way they talk. It's how they present themselves. So how can you do that for yourself? And then lastly, of course, converting. We're here to make money. I don't think people should work for free. Maybe in the beginning you do a little bit, but I think we need to get compensated generously for the gifts that we have. And so how do you convert the attention? So if you're a content creator, I would say for every creator out there, build your email list, get on Discord, start building a community, WhatsApp, whatever, send them notes, doesn't matter, I don't know.
Actually connect
send
with
them
people.
Letters. Yeah, connect with people and create a space where they can communicate with each other. So the people that look up to you, they probably want to engage with each other and you want to engage with them. So build your community as much as possible. If you are listening to this and you don't have a business or you want to create content but you don't know how, you can monetize an audience. And if you have an audience, if you have a community, you can monetize that. Yeah, so that's kind of on the strategy side. Mindset, there's so many things that stop people from creating. fear of judgment, fear of, I mean, that's a whole separate.
Whole nother podcast.
That's a whole nother podcast. Like, I'll save that. I'll save that.
But we got to break through the fear.
Yeah.
Break through the fear, get the mindset on track before we go for all the strategies. Okay.
Yep.
I like it. I have 2 more questions for you.
Of course.
What is something that most people don't know about you that you wish they did?
Something I wish. I would say that I'm an introvert, but I keep talking about that, so people would probably know by now. But
Why do you feel like people should know that?
I think they should know because I think people put a lot on others, especially people that are out in the public eye or that have a platform, or people that put themselves out there. I think people extract a lot of energy, and they think they can just take, and that you're just fine, and that you can just keep going endlessly. So I think it's important that people respect the introvert, and especially in leadership, which I think is a whole topic that we didn't really touch on, but that's like a whole nother Pandora's box of leadership.
Right.
But I think leaders, really great leaders, are actually introverts, and they can listen. And I don't need to be the first person to talk. I don't need to be the last person to talk. I don't need to be the loudest. Don't need to have the best ideas. I think if you can listen and let other people do what they're gonna do, that's a really great quality. So I would say,
and then use it strategically to actually like pull people together, build that community. And like you said, you've observed and trained over time, so you're adaptable. And I'm sure that comes from how much you reflect and are able to take in when you're in your introverted settings.
Yeah, and just growing up feeling like I didn't fit in so many spaces, that I was like a chameleon, and I would try to assimilate into other people's environment, which I think kind of became toxic in a lot of ways. My people pleasing has been toxic for a long time.
Oh, you ain't gotta tell me that one.
That's a whole nother thing. But yeah,
we need a People Pleasers Anonymous group that we can just
I need to join that.
break through.
Need to join that.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
I got you, girl. We'll just have our accountability calls.
Yeah.
You people pleasing this week?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah. I think there's some advantages to it, right? Weakness and strength.
Yeah, exactly.
Both in play.
Exactly. It's why I have so many. I did have one birthday where I actually invited all of my friends, and there's like student government friends that I party with, friends from this organization, and it was a weird group. I thought it was great.
We have layers to
great,
us.
But it was a weird group of people to get together.
You never know who's going to connect, though, right?
I love that. I love that for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last question. What do you envision your legacy to be?
My legacy to be.
I know. I gotta put the hard ones right at the end.
I know.
They're the deep ones.
What I want it to be is people feeling that after they knew me or consumed my content or whatever it was, that they feel like they were inspired to do something that they wouldn't have done before, that they would have let fear or whatever holds them back, they would have let it hold them back. So I want people to go out there and kick ass and take names and be awesome and inspire other people to do it, and just be nicer, be kinder to other people. It can feel like it's a rough time, and so I don't think that that's going away. I think, and I want my legacy definitely to be that I helped women build generational wealth and leave toxic, abusive relationships.
Yes, I love that. It's that ripple of transformative change, kindness that is long-standing, not just one little ounce of kindness, but something that's within that people can really work through. It's a ripple of breakthroughs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
I love that.
Thank you.
Christina, I love it. Like, I literally am going to go back, listen to the podcast, and be like, here's note 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like, because it has so many good nuggets that I feel like we could just put like little checklists of like, on your journey, here's things to remember. And more than anything, I think the pattern I've heard you say is that it's always going to be about the mindset. You talked about how being at the place that you feel like is the bottom, or the places that contribute to feelings of bitterness, can serve as a motivator. You talked about transforming weaknesses into strengths, and even the examples of you may not always be in the space you want to be in, but shift the perspective and you can make meaning off of that. You're not always broke. I don't even want to say that. Like, transform the language we use. All those things have to do with mindset at the end of the day. And now I see you helping so many women, people in general, but especially women in their social media, to show up authentically only through that mindset change as that first step. So I'm loving that. I'm like definitely taking it in myself and thinking about how can I go back and check my mindset on a daily basis so that I'm always showing up authentically. Because it's hard on some days. It is.
You're good.
Thank you.
You're good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, girl.
This is awesome.
How can people connect with you?
Yeah, if you want to connect and get some free content, I am at Cristina, it's Cristina Cortes, Cortess, because Cristina Cortes was taken.
We're going to take that back. It's fine.
Yeah, I got to buy my name back. But that's my handle on Instagram and TikTok, so you can find me there and get some free inspiration and strategies, tips, all the things.
Yes. Go check out Cristina, y'all. Make sure you follow her. And if you need some help with your social media or just kind of finding that place to be authentic with a trusted source, Cristina is a great person to do that. And I'm hoping there's more content and cocktails events coming up, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yes.
Yeah. So that's how one of the ways we connected was her content and cocktails event. Our last one was here at the Silicon Valley Capital Club. Make sure you're following her. There's more details coming soon, I'm sure. But I want to finish with just a huge thank you. Yeah. And please know that you are inspiring so many women, and I can be one of those examples because you have inspired me for sure.
Thank you. You inspire me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yay.
We need more drinks. That's it.
Yeah. Woohoo.
Thank you for tuning in to the Here to Uplift podcast. New episodes are airing every week with some bonus episodes in between too. So make sure you stay tuned by subscribing, following, liking, and engaging with us to let us know what topics you're most interested in and what might inspire you along this journey. We're going to keep working hard on our end because we are here to uplift not only ourselves, but our community too, and that includes you. So I can't wait for you to hear the next episode. But for now, do your thing, let's get it, and let's keep moving forward. Uplift yourself, friends. You got this.